and I was in a conference the whole week. I'm like, I really want to ask a question, but I can't make my voice talk.
How are you managing work with your flu?
Well, most of the symptoms are over. It's just mostly a residual sore throat and a voice that decides to work sometimes and not other times.
Brutal. Hey, Taryn.
You have infection control, right, Topher? So you're all good.
Yeah, well, I wash my hands all the time. I don't wear a mask the entire time, but yeah, I'm not coughing on anyone.
I got to get my names ready for our raffle. I got to cut my paper up. Taryn.
Yes.
What did you do today?
I was off today, so laundry.
Laundry. It has to be done. Very good.
It does.
What else?
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong with that.
I went to a study club. Actually, just got home from the study club.
Nice.
That's what you guys talk about.
Cool.
We had a endodontist come speak about diagnosis.
Who arranged that? Who put together the study club?
It's a young women's dentist study club just in my area. It is a periodontist that organizes it, but it's mostly general dentists that attend.
Nice. Very cool.
So I don't know if any of you caught the Netflix documentary Root Cause before they took it down.
I didn't see it.
Did anybody see that?
Mm-mm.
I did not.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting couple-hour documentary about root canals. And Netflix got enough heat about it that they took it down. It's off.
I read about that, and I think they took it down because it wasn't a high-quality documentary. Because Amazon and the other providers still have it up.
Oh, did they?
So you can still find it. But yeah, it was semi-bogus.
It's got some interesting stuff in it. But anyway.
Well, it's a very small group here. I want to give everybody maybe 2 more minutes to 6:35 until we start. Last time, man, we had 17 people, so hopefully I didn't pick a bad night for this. But I'm grateful for it.
Maybe it's the quality of the guests tonight.
Or at least
everybody off.
Whatever. That's funny. But Steve, do you know all of the doctors we're talking to? I know you know. Jeremy says you guys live.
Yep. So I know Jeremy Topher. I think I've met everybody. So.
And Darren Liu came to us through. Darren's not going to talk. It looks like he's chatting. He's at a coffee shop. So Darren was at the annual event. Really, really cool story. He was part of the Ignite DDS program with Dr. Rice, and just a really neat influencer type doctor. So I'm really grateful that Darren would be with us. So I know you all know Steve, but I feel like as moderator, I guess that I should introduce him. The one thing that I love about Steve is that trusting him and his opinion doesn't come from just random knowledge that he reads or picks up in books. He knows it because he lives it, and he knows the industry because he's in the industry with his own work. Watching him as a speaker is special, but watching him as a business owner is even more special, with what he does, what he builds, how he creates, and then how he lives, what he teaches is the best part about Steve. And I love to watch him as a mentor create things, and I would trust him and what he says because he lives it. So I'm not going to read your bio, Steve, because you always say that it sounds like it's written by your mom. So I'm not going to read it. But he's compiled a great list. We have 13 questions that were submitted that I'll just let Steve run through them. I'm going to record the call and I guess share it. I feel like I shouldn't share it though with those who didn't show up to be part of this group. So whenever you're ready, Steve.
Sounds good. All right. So thanks for everybody who sent questions in. These are not necessarily in any particular order. We've got everything from marketing to case acceptance to morning meetings to you name it. So I'm just going to run through the questions, and you are welcome to add to and ask questions as we go along. So feel free to unmute yourself when you feel compelled to ask a question. All right, so first question is, how can I best communicate and help my patients value dentistry? It seems like many of them will only do what their insurance covers, even though we try to stress the importance of fixing everything now, not later. And we offer extended 18-month interest-free payment plans. All right, so there are a couple of key principles here, which is people are more convinced by the things that they themselves have discovered and that they value more than what is valued by others. And so one of the biggest challenges in dentistry is trying to talk patients into treatment. And you can't ever talk anybody into treatment, and you can't convince them of anything. And so the switch in the mentality, and Jeremy, you can speak to this as well as Topher, because you guys have been through our total immersion course, is questions are the secret for case acceptance. So people value what they value, not necessarily what you value initially. And so one of the keys is to find out what they truly value and why are they there in the first place. So, for example, if you saw patients today or you see patients tomorrow sometime this week, and let's say somebody comes in for a regular cleaning, the question would be, why are they there? What did they come for? And the easy answer would be to say, well, they came for a cleaning. And I would hold that that is not why they came, that there's a bigger reason why they came, that the cleaning is a means to an end, but not an end to itself. And so simple questions to a patient like that would be, in fact, Stuart, maybe you can help me with this. If you were the patient, then I would say, Stuart, we're glad that you came in for your cleaning today. For you, what is the most important thing to you about getting your teeth cleaned?
I speak a lot to people, and I really don't want to have bad breath.
Got it. So for you, it's important to have confidence when you're in front of people and never being in a position where you have to be self-conscious about making somebody else uncomfortable. Am I right?
You're right.
So what we're committed to do here for you today is to help you get everything that you wanted. And with your permission, I would like to share anything that I would be concerned about if I were you. And if my objective were making sure I had fresh breath and confidence everywhere I went, then from what you've said, it sounds like my job is to make sure that everything is in place so you can have that. How does that sound?
It sounds great. I'll do anything you say.
Of course. So the point is, the starting point is to find what is of most interest to them and why. And then everything that you talk about from that point forward is going to point back to what they said was important to them. And you could do that with anything. If they said, I don't want to lose my teeth, or I don't like to be in pain, or whatever it is, something in what they say is going to highlight something that you can go back to on a regular basis as you are diagnosing and treatment planning that will tie into something they want. So the key here is patients value what they value, not necessarily what you value. So you have to determine what they value first before you ever diagnose. If you diagnose without agreement on what they really want, then you are going to spend a lot of time wasted on talking to them about things they don't perceive to need or to want. All right. Question. What's up, Shaq?
Shaq.
All right. Question number 2. How can I help my team feel that dentistry is more valuable? I feel that sometimes because staff receives care at no cost or a reduced cost, they place less value on it, and so they aren't as effective at communicating the importance of getting of getting all the patient's treatment plan completed at one time. Okay, so point well taken. It is very difficult to quote unquote sell something that you've never purchased. Is kind of as difficult as to go back to some place you've never been. So there are a couple of ways around this, which is depending on the kind of dentistry you do and the average value that patients will pay for it. One of the things that we have done in the past is we like to give teams, and if I could just make this suggestion, it's a team, it's not a staff. Staff is an infection. So a team, give them an experience someplace that is a product or a service or an experience that's comparable to the investment that people would make in dentistry. So let me give you an example of this. We had a team several years ago in Detroit that, and this is when Detroit has had some very interesting economic ups and downs. And this was during one of the economic tough times in Detroit. And the team was absolutely convinced that no one in Detroit had any money and that no one could afford dentistry when they came in because of all the economic issues and layoffs and the whole deal. So here's what we did. We planned an evening at a very nice restaurant in Detroit for the entire team and asked them to dress their very best, meet at the restaurant, the whole deal. They got to eat anything they wanted to eat. And at the end of dinner, this was the discussion. The server brought the check out for dinner, and it was well over $1,000 for dinner. And so the dentist passed the check around. And then he asked them to look around the restaurant. And every seat in the restaurant was filled. And the point was that there were a lot of people in that restaurant that night that were choosing to voluntarily spend their money on an elective meal. They could have gone home and had a much less expensive meal, but they chose to do that because they saw some value in that. And so the lesson was different people see value in different things, and there are plenty of people that have the resources to invest in things that they really want, like dinner at a really nice restaurant. So that is an example of, it's not just the dentistry, it's the whole mentality in general is to understand that there are people that have different priorities and different values, and to give them the experience to show them exactly what that means to different people. And there are people out there that that value those kinds of things and will pay for it. And the postscript to that was that insurance did not pay for all of those people's meal. All right, number 3. I'm currently planning on doing a startup practice with the goal of opening next year. What are the top 3 things that I can do to create a culture of success from the start? Okay, so here would be, I'll give you 3 things. I'll give you more than 3 things, but here would be the first, is to be the person that you want to hire. So most people do not hire much above who they are themselves. So you need to be the type of person that you want on your team, and be very, very careful about who you hire, because they will be the image that will be portrayed of your practice. So be it, and be very careful who you choose to let on your team. And that you make sure they're people who represent what you believe in the most. Number 2 is to get very involved in the community in which you practice, to even before, if you're opening next year, right now is not too early to get involved in the community and in service organizations. Join Rotary, join any kind of community organization you can, get involved in the chamber, but get involved in the community so that you're visible and you start building relationships in the community beyond just what your marketing will do. And then, third thing to create a culture of success would be to take advantage of all the resources that we have on the Crown Council website and learn them, use them, learn them, and make them a part of everything you do. Everything we've created in the Crown Council is designed to help build and maintain a culture of success. So use it. There's years worth of resources there. Videos, training sessions, webinars, all kinds of stuff that will help build a very, very successful practice. Number 4 is, which books do you highly recommend for practice growth and management other than your
own?
Yeah. So I am assuming that everybody has read The Culture of Success. So that is the cornerstone. We consider it one of the cornerstones of building a successful practice. So let me give you some of my favorites that have had a big impact on me that I would highly recommend for anybody in building any kind of a business. Number 1 would be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It is a staple. I consider it the self-improvement book of all self-improvement books. So it's a classic. It was written during the Depression, based on 25 years worth of research. It's got some just really good, sound, fundamental philosophies for success. Along with that, a classic is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's a classic. I think every grade school student should have to read that book. I actually read How to Win Friends and Influence People the first time when I was in the 3rd grade. So that was a open reading assignment that my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Stirk, gave us. And we could read any book we wanted with her approval. And I went home and searched the family library, and that was the book I chose. So I took that back the next morning, and Mrs. Stirk looked at it, and she said, this is a very interesting choice for an 8-year-old. But it is a great read. It's very basic common sense. Dentistry is a people business, and that book is all about people. Another classic is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was written by a mentor of mine, Dr. Stephen Covey, and it's classic and just has really good sound business principles in it. Another one that has become part of our culture at the Crown Council is the 4 Disciplines of Execution. There is a Mentor of the Month program, if you search for it on the website, called the 4 Disciplines of Execution. It is one of the best pieces of work on goal setting that I have ever read. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and very easy to implement. So those would be some starters. There's a lot more where that came from, but those would be my starting list if I were going to give you a starting list of good books. Number 5, what do you see top producing practices doing that others don't? Okay, well, this is probably a 2-day commentary on this one. Here is one of my favorite quotes from a guy by the name of Albert E.N. Gray, who gave a talk a long time ago, almost 90 years ago, called The Common Denominator of Success. And this is also one that's on the Crown Council website. And what he said was that successful people, and you can put any word you want in there, successful dentists, successful team members, successful whatever, have formed the habit of doing things that unsuccessful people do not like to do. So let me say that again. Successful people or dentists or whatever have formed the habit of doing things that unsuccessful or failures don't like to do. So then the question is, what are the things that failures don't like to do? And the answer to that is that it's the very same thing that successful people don't like to do. The only difference is successful people have formed the habit of doing what they ought to do when they ought to do it, whether they want to or not, with no debate. They do what they ought to do. It doesn't have anything to do with likes and dislikes. They do things because they get the results that they want. So that was one of his points, is successful people are focused on pleasing results, while failures are focused on pleasing methods. They do things that are pleasant, that make them feel good, that pass the time, whereas successful people do the things that will make them successful, that will get the results that they want. So what do practices that, what are they doing that others don't? Well, they're doing the things that get results. For example, they have team members that are constantly focused on the 3 highest priorities in a dental practice, which are schedule, produce, and collect. So they execute on the basic fundamentals of those every day, of keeping the schedule full and constantly working on that. They produce more than scheduled because they have an effective morning meeting that is based on an agenda that helps the team plan to have a successful day and to produce more than they have on the schedule at the beginning of the day. And they are efficient during the day and effective, and they make sure that they collect for what they've done. So there's a lot of habits around around schedule, produce, collect, but it's staying focused on the highest priorities and staying focused on results, not just pleasing methods.
I love that. That is so good. And Steve, you read the common denominator of success for a mentor of the month, and you read the whole script for the mentor. It is really good. I think it's like 35 minutes long. It is worth it.
It's a great piece of literature. It's a classic. And well worth about a dozen listens.
Yeah.
Number 6, is there a good way to have a morning opportunity meeting when people have different start times? In my circumstance, there are as many as 4 different start times in a single day. So the answer to that is yes, especially if it's an expanded schedule. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. Let me give you 2 options. One is to have a morning meeting in the morning with a written agenda with notes that is then posted on the lunchroom wall that everybody can refer to as they come in during the day. So that's one way to do it. Number 2 is we have teams that have 2 morning meetings a day, one in the morning and one at the beginning of the afternoon. depending on what their shifts are and when people come in. So depends on your schedule. But I am a huge, huge advocate for figuring it out when to have it, because it is the most effective way to keep the whole team coordinated. So depending on your schedule, you got to figure out a way to do it. Everybody may not be able to be a part of it every day, but especially as it has to do with doctor production, looking at hygiene opportunities, conversion exams, all those things we talked about. Short of having a morning meeting, the effectiveness and the results are going to be very much diminished. Number 7, what trends have you seen in dental advertising? So here's there's a couple of comments I'll make about this. There is a difference between doing marketing for people who are looking for you versus doing marketing for people that may not be looking for you. So, for example, anybody that finds you on the internet, they are looking for something dental related right now. So there's 2 parts to this equation, which is you have to be, your internet presence has to be optimized in such a way that you come up in the search results for the type of services that you are doing. So that's a big part, is getting them there in the first place. And then the second piece is making your website sticky so that when they get there, they stay there, that you have interesting content that makes them want to dig deeper. So it's getting them there and then keeping them there so that they respond, they call, they send in an email request, they text, whatever it might be. Now, the other piece is, what about the people who are not looking for you today? So that is, everybody's a prospect. Everybody in America needs a dentist. Even people without teeth need a dentist. So everybody's a prospect, and half of America does not go to the dentist on a regular basis. So there's a huge untapped market out there of people who aren't looking and would engage if they were given a good reason. So that happens in a couple of different ways. How do you reach people who are not reaching for you? So, for example, social media is a good way to do that. If you have engaging content that people would forward or share with friends, direct mail is not dead in many markets. It's still alive and well. Depending on the type of work you're doing, we have many practices that still advertise in the newspaper because certain markets still read their local newspaper. So, in terms of trends, I would say the beautiful thing today is there are more marketing channels available to market your practice than there's ever been. It just continues to multiply. There's many, many, many different ways to do it. Whereas 40, 50 years ago, the only thing a dentist was allowed to do was put a 2-inch sign on their building, and that was the extent of their marketing. So a lot of options today. And so you have to really dig down and determine which channels are the best for you and how you're going to develop those. And, for the people that are looking, how do you make yourself more visible? And then how do you approach the people who are not necessarily looking for you, and how you can reach them. Number 8, social media. Instagram is the way a lot of younger dentists are growing their business. How can you be professional and yet cutting edge with social media? The concern is I don't want to scare away patients that are older or have what is posted to be the hip effect. Retention of other patients. I'm not sure I understand all that, but any advice you have with regards to social media, specifically with Insta stories. So here would be the suggestion here is there might be a difference between your personal Instagram account and your practice Instagram account. Instagram, Facebook, whatever your channel is. So here's the formula for social media. And it's a two-part formula, which is in everything that you do, you want to be able to communicate warmth and competence. So you have to be able to prove that you are competent at your trade, you know what you're doing, and you do it well. And at the same time, people want to know that you're human and that you have feelings and that you're not just a dentist. So even if you were to do an office Instagram account, the balance might be to have for every couple of clinical posts that you do, like a before and after, or if you have permission from a patient to share their story on Instagram, so you would have clinical things. And then every once in a while, do something that's a little bit more personal that shows the human side of who you are, who your team is. But again, you'd be well served to have an office Instagram account, and then you might have a personal one. But keep in mind, you are a local business person, and everybody is watching your every move. So whatever you post, just keep that in mind. Is everybody is a potential patient. So there's a great piece of work. We had a Crown Council mentor a couple years ago by the name of John Malone, who wrote a book called The Human Brand. And it is a great tutorial on how to be your own brand, that you as a person, you are the brand. And then he has a lot of tips on how you need to conduct yourself to be brand worthy. So it's great piece of work. Number 9, how to earn referrals from specialists. We are younger dentists, and a lot of dentists around us have had long-term relationships with these practitioners. What has worked for your offices? So here would be a question, depending on who the specialists are, and depending on how much they actually do refer. A specialist is in a very interesting position because they live and die based on referrals from you, from the general dentist. So when the only time they can actually refer a patient is if a patient comes to them on their own, not having been referred by anybody, which doesn't necessarily happen a lot unless you have, for example, an orthodontist that is doing a lot of direct marketing and trying to get people to come in on their own without going through their dentist. So as a focus, I'm not sure I would really focus or worry a whole lot about referrals from specialists. If I were going to focus my efforts, I would focus my efforts more on getting engaged with the community, engaging in businesses in town, getting referrals from my patients, and using that as a real area of focus. We work with, at Total Patient Service, we work with a lot of specialty practices. And I will tell you, they are very cautious about referring a patient. I was with a big oral surgery group just a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the topics is, what do we do when a patient's been referred by a general dentist and the patient says, I'm not sure I want to go back to my dentist. Can you refer me to another office? Well, a specialist can't do that. That would be just professional. It would not be a good thing. You can't do that. So I'm not sure I'd worry a whole lot about it. I would focus my efforts on patient referrals, getting involved in the community, getting good on the internet, and not sure I'd worry too much about the specialist. Number 10, any advice on how to convince the entire family to switch over to our office? We have patients that love our office, but how can you ask them to ask for their family members to come into our office? The doctor asked the hygienist to ask for friends and family, but what advice do you have on how to implement a subtle way to get referrals from existing patients? Okay, so let me give you some specifics here. One, and those of you that have been through our Total Immersion course, this is a review. And repetition is the mother of learning. So one of the questions that we highly recommend that every new patient be asked on the phone right after they have scheduled their first appointment and before they have come in is if Stuart had just scheduled an appointment, before I let him go, I would ask Stuart, who else should we go ahead and schedule today while it's convenient and I have you on the phone? Who else should we go ahead and schedule? It's an assumptive question. And the idea behind this is that if Stuart is looking for a new dentist, chances are that Kristen is as well, his wife, unless she's already part of the practice. So it is a common sense question to ask every new patient that schedules an appointment, who else should we go ahead and schedule? And many times you'll pick up family members at the first visit, the very first phone call, if you just ask. Okay, so that's number one. That is free. That is what I call getting a free new patient. Costs you nothing to ask that question. It should be asked to every patient who schedules a new patient appointment. Number two, this is the most powerful way that I know how to build a great family referred practice. And this is a chapter out of the Success Handbook for Building a Great Dental Practice from Dr. Tom Neighbors. So Dr. Tom Neighbors is one of the foremost leaders and pioneers in the treatment, the diagnosis and treatment of periodontal disease. He is the father of Dr. Tommy Neighbors, who is the clinical director of our what we call our No More Hygiene course, which is a protocol that they have developed called modular periodontal therapy. So one of the things that Dr. Neighbors highly recommends in any good hygiene protocol is bacteria testing, or what's known as DNA PCR testing, so that there are 11 different types of bacteria that have been found to be directly associated with periodontal disease. Those bacteria can be tested so that you know exactly what's in your patient's mouth so that it can be treated. Now, here's what he recommends is that if you have patients that have any level of periodontal disease, including stage 1 periodontitis, so any level of periodontal disease, that they be tested to see exactly what the strain of the bacteria is that's in their mouth. And he would say, if he were here, that you cannot adequately or responsibly treat periodontal disease if you have not taken the entire family into consideration. Everyone under the same roof, because there's too much of that that's being shared. Food is shared, cups are shared, you know the story. And so in Dr. Neighbors' book, that is a discussion that he has immediately with new patients, is if there's any level of periodontal disease, then he has a discussion about their entire family and bringing the family in to be tested so that they can take care of the entire problem. You cannot cure periodontal disease with one person in a household. It takes everybody in the household has to be treated. If one person has it, and here's the data, if one person has it, there is an 80%, typically an 80% correlation that the rest of the family members will have a very similar bacteria profile. So they're sharing everything.
Yeah.
So we're talking from a clinical standpoint. If you're going to do the responsible thing and treat the disease, you have to treat the family. You cannot just treat the patient. So the verbal skills for that are to have a conversation with them and say, okay, here's the level of disease, and here's what that means down the road. Does that concern you? And would you like to get rid of this? Because that is what we would highly recommend, because we know the whole health repercussions of periodontal disease. And then share what we have found is that this is not just a personal problem, it's a family issue. And that if one person in the family has it, it's like the flu or the common cold or anything else. A lot of times it gets passed around. Is we need to take a look at the whole family to see what the profile is so we can get rid of it in your household. Does that make sense? So that right there, to me, the prevalence of periodontal disease is the most widespread disease in the world. And dentistry is the only one treating it. And so it, in my mind, is the most powerful way to get the rest of the family in the office, is to address the reality of the disease and what it really takes to cure it. So hopefully that sheds a little light. That is not something that we find that a lot of practices have figured out. And so there's a lot of pieces to that. But the biggest piece is, how are you identifying the disease? Are you testing for it? Are you using oral DNA? Is the lab that does the DNA PCR testing? They'll send back to you the whole profile of the patient, exactly what's going on in their mouth. It's one of the most powerful ways to get family involved. All right, number 11. What is the best way you have found to get your patients to leave you Google reviews? All right, well, there's two parts to this. One is you have to be review worthy. So you have to do things that are worthy of people talking about. So that's the first thing, is, are we review worthy? Do we have everything dialed in to the point that patients would want to leave us a positive review? So that's one. Number two is ask for them. If you want a positive review, ask for it. So, for example, if Stuart just happened to give me an offhanded compliment or expression of appreciation, then there is an open opportunity to ask for a review. So if he just in passing says, I love my new smile, you guys have changed my life, whatever it is, then I might say, Stuart, I'm so glad you feel that way. In fact, we know that there are a lot of people that could benefit the same way you have if they just knew and heard from people like you. Would you be willing to share what you just shared with me in the form of an online review so that other people can benefit like you have?
Ooh, that's good.
He's going to say yes. Okay. Now, so that's just taking the opportunity when they give you a compliment or thank you, just then you take it to the next level. The second is to ask for them, and you have to ask them some well-positioned questions to get them to say something positive. Something as genius as, how was your visit today? Or what was the best thing about your visit today, Stuart? And let him share something. And then you do the same thing, is would you be willing to share your great experience in the form of an online review so that other people could benefit like you have? So there's a lot of good software review tools out there today, and they're all great, they're all good, and there is nothing more powerful than asking. So there's a lot. I know Yelp is, they say that you can't ask for a Yelp review and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, when people are saying positive things about you, there is no reason why you can't encourage or ask them to share what they've just shared online. And then what the software does, the software will make it easier for them to do that, easier for them to connect, and then you can connect them to do it.
Steve, I've heard you give a really good advice about this, which is finding at the morning opportunity meeting 2 people before they come in that the team agrees that these are the 2 people that we should ask today for the Google review. So setting it up with the team before it actually happens and talking about who you're going to pick. Is that still solid advice moving forward for that?
Yeah, in fact, what we recommend in the morning meeting is 2 reviews and 2 referrals. So that you identify 2 patients to ask for a review at least, and 2 patients to ask for a referral. And there's a whole step-by-step methodology of that. But if you identify those in the meeting first thing in the day, then you'll have more of a likelihood. And then the next morning, whoever was assigned to ask for those reviews and referrals gets to report back on their results. So it is a daily discipline. This is one of those things, just like we talked about, successful practices form the habit of doing things that unsuccessful practices don't like to do. This is a habit. This is one of those habits. You just do it every day, just part of your daily discipline. Number 12, how many new patients should you aim to get a month? So the answer to this is it depends. It depends on what kind of a practice you have. So if it's a totally fee-for-service practice, you do not accept assignment, you're not contracted with any insurance, and you're doing larger, cosmetic type cases, then you could get by on, maybe 15 or 20 new patients a month. If you're contracted, then typically what we aim for and what we want is 40. 40 new patients a month. That's not always possible, but that's what we're striving to hit. So then the next question is, how much do you invest in that? So general rule of thumb, the fee-for-service practices that we work with will, on average, will spend around 10% of collections, so 10% of revenue on marketing. And contracted practices, the budget is more like 4%. So if that gives you any idea in terms of investment and budget, what's what we typically see. Number 13, is it legal to offer a small discount or an incentive for online reviews? So the different review sites have different rules around that. In general, no, it's not. And I think in a lot of ways, it kind of cheapens it. If Stuart's given me a compliment, my asking him to share that, I don't think I need to incentivize him. Because that's what it is. And there's a big, and here's just a point of differentiation. There's a difference between an incentive and a reward. So an incentive is something that's offered in advance of the desired action. A reward is something that is given after a desired action, that is given to someone who has no anticipation of any compensation, appreciation, or anything. So when it comes to reviews and referrals, my preference is to go the reward route, which is to thank them, to acknowledge it, but not necessarily. I think if you incentivize it, it cheapens it. It's kind of like I can buy you. And if you're taking something that's emotional to them their goodwill, their compliment, all of those things, and you're trying to monetize it. So here's the word picture I would give you. It would be, Jeremy, I'll take you for an example. It would be like having Thanksgiving dinner at your in-laws' house, and you had a great Thanksgiving dinner, and then you went up to your mother-in-law at the end of dinner and say, that was such an amazing dinner. How much do I owe you? Or even worse, if you want to incentivize it, if you called her up in advance of Thanksgiving and say, how much do I need to pay you for a really good dinner? Or I'll pay you $100 if we can. You don't do that because she's not doing it for the money. She's doing it out of goodwill.
Yeah, that wouldn't go too well in my.
It would not go over well. It would probably be the last Thanksgiving dinner.
And Steve, believe it or not, I'm actually watching this at my in-laws' house right now.
Excellent. Well, tell your mother-in-law that I'm thinking of her.
I will. Thank you.
That's just a principle of psychology is you have to be very careful about monetizing goodwill or monetizing things that starts out as something emotional for them. A thank you for me and an expression of appreciation goes a lot further than trying to monetize it. So, food for thought on that one. All right, that's our list of 13 questions, dude. That took us almost an hour to motor through those.
Why doesn't everybody unmute themselves? I'm interested in knowing what everyone. I mean, there's not very many of us. Can you each tell me what you've heard Steve say it before, and we'll say it again, but what you learned is very important, but I'm really interested to hear what you guys are going to take, what you think you're going to take home with you, or any action item that you feel like you're going to move forward with. I'd love to hear from each of you. Can we just go in order? Jeremy, then Darren, then Topher, then Taryn. Go ahead. You want to go first, Jeremy?
Yeah, I can go first. I wrote down every single one of those books that you mentioned, Steve. And so a couple of them I read, but I would definitely like to kind of read some more of those.
Excellent.
Nice. How about you, Darren? Do you want to type? Can you type or can you talk? Or not? No? Maybe he's...
It's not.
Topher, do you want to go? Can you hear me still?
Yeah. Well, I was going to read all those books too. I just finished one of the books, and so it was really powerful, and I've been using it. But there's now, 5 more books that I got to read. So, yeah, it's good, and it's good to have the numbers to compare to see how we're doing in comparison of what is expected in an office. So I'm going to be looking at those numbers to see how they compare.
Excellent.
Cool. Very good. Taryn?
I'm looking forward to implementing what we talked about with treatment acceptance, figuring out what the patient values and kind of using that as a talking point to encourage them to accept.
Nice. Very good. All right, Darren responded. I'll read it. I know he's at a coffee shop. He says, I love the book recommendations. I like the philosophy about the reviews and how to make the process not as awkward but more organic. Very good. Piggybacking off the compliments is a huge opening. I've recorded the call, and I think that would be, if there's an aspect of this call, it would be really nice to review that and kind of practice. That's a really smart way to do it. So, Shaq, how about you, man?
Just piggybacking off of the same thing, using compliments to organically request reviews and just kind of help bolster us both on social media and just review presence on the internet in general.
Very good. Nice. Any follow-up there? I mean, how do you think you'll do that?
I mean, the biggest thing is, again, utilizing natural comments that happen on a day-to-day whenever you're communicating with your patient, you're spending that time with them to kind of lead in or segue into having myself or even other team members ask for those reviews. And just like Steve said, if you don't ask, you won't receive. So
yeah,
it is a daily discipline.
Very good.
That it is. And so it's always a part of our morning opportunity meeting, you know, to kind of really focus on if any team members have a specific patient they have good contact or good relationship with, to kind of really ensure that we ask them. But I really like the idea of keeping it as natural as possible with positive comments leading into it. Because you know, if you do what you're supposed to, you get the positive comment. You just need to lead into it to follow it and get the results.
Amen.
Nice, Shaq. Thanks. All right, Mary, how about you? Mary joined us. There you go.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry. Yeah, I did join a little late. I apologize. So I missed the first few questions, but not to be repetitive, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I really like the asking for reviews because I definitely get kind of awkward when patients say good things and are thankful, and I don't know how to turn that into a request back from them. Go ahead.
Now you know.
Now I know, yes. And I like that verbiage of also saying, asking for it so that it can benefit others so that they can have that experience. I think that's really important to add in there.
Nice. Very good. All right, Zach, you're last.
Yeah, I would just say adding to what the last two have said, I'd like to start implementing in my morning meetings with not only the assistants but the hygienists as well, who build that natural relationship with the patients every 6 months over and over and over, to kind of point out 2 referrals, 2 reviews that we can work on throughout the day and throughout the week to really bump up the Google reviews and Yelp reviews.
It's a good suggestion too, because you can be accountable for it. I mean, if you're making that decision at the beginning, then there's also a follow-up the next day or in the evening. So it is
right.
a good idea.
I'll tell you one just postscript here in terms of what we're seeing happening in hygiene now. Just the whole health nature of what is being discovered about periodontal disease. I mean, the data is just compounding daily. And what it means is the hygiene chair is the most important healthcare place that most people have in their lives. Unless they have some kind of chronic condition, the one place that they go on a regular basis is in that hygiene chair. And so that means that your office and your hygienist are the leading healthcare professional in your patients' lives. And what's going on in their mouth is a huge indicator of their total health. So the more and more that can be communicated with people so that they start to understand that, their perspective of staying on top of their regular visits is going to change. They'll be the ones that are pushing to be in there on a regular basis, because the health of their mouth is going to become just like taking their blood pressure. It's an indicator of what's going on with their overall health. So that's the education challenge. It is you guys are just getting into the business, and one of the realities of business in this country is there are ups and downs. There are recessions, and there are booms and there are busts. And the practices that do the best long term, that weather the ups and the downs, are the ones that have a very strong hygiene department, because that's what carries the practice through the ups and the downs. Those good, loyal, repeat and referral patients that understand the value of good oral health, that come month after month, year after year, they keep coming back. So food for thought.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. And I'm thankful for each of you. The more work we do together, the more I serve and set things up for you, the more grateful I am for each of you. I'm just looking forward to the summer and hanging out and doing more. The Smile Design, I'm just so grateful to be able to do it with each of you. So I put your names on these pieces of paper. Okay, I'm gonna shake them up. Then I'll send whoever name I draw. I'll send you an iTunes card. My gratefulness that you'd be here with us. So, okay, you ready? It's very scientific. It's a very interesting process. Okay, here it is. Okay, it's Mary. All right, Mary, I'll send you your iTunes card. Grateful you'd be here. Thank you.
Ooh, thank you.
All right. Any following ending questions or anything else from any of you or from Steve?
Thanks
All right.
for being here tonight.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you.